Welcome. My name is Adam Luke,
I'm Judy Ann.
and this is a SessionWell podcast. What is a SessionWell podcast? What it is we created a space for pre-licensed clinicians, licensed clinicians, and the everyday Joe looking for therapy interventions and the way that therapy can work in your own life. So we sit down with amazing clinicians and amazing regular people, and we have a discussion. So thank you for tuning in.
And thank you guys for joining us. If you ever need any sort of marketing, whether it's websites or client lead generations, you can always call my brother, Freddie Ann at Cura Studios.
Perfect. Well, this week we have a pretty cool person sitting down with us. If you've been in Southern California and worked with clinicians, you've probably heard Chris Williams. So here we are.
Hey guys,
Thanks for joining us.
it's so good to be here. I'm excited to be with you guys.
Thank you for letting us be in your space. We're actually in one of the Renovari rooms.
I know, I love this space. Speaking of that, I look at space as its own intervention. And that's really important to me because really what I want people to be able to do as they're looking at the most honest version of their lives and their stories is to be able to sit down, take a deep breath, get comfortable, feel like they're in a living room that they've always wanted but never had,
Wow.
and just be able to say the most honest thing that needs to be said.
Yeah, you've definitely created a space here that does all of that.
That's good. That's great to hear. That's good. That's great affirmation. Yeah.
So tell me, how did Renovari come about? How did you, how did we get here?
How did we get here? So, just kind of my journey, a little bit of that story. Yeah.
Maybe a little bit.
Well, I mean, a long time ago, around my late 20s, I had been a pastor for a little while. That was actually my first career. I had been in the home building industry for a little while, and but there was this thing inside of me as my own issues, as my own struggles were coming forth, and it wasn't until I got in the rooms of therapy myself that I realized, oh my gosh, there's something here to this, and there's something really beneficial to me, and finding that healing and finding that growth. And over the course of that, I just thought, I think I would like to do this, but I think I would be okay at it. I think I'd be pretty good at it. So, fast forward, I was living in Colorado at the time, moved out here to California with my wife, and we started new careers and went to school, got my license, and sort of cut my teeth or grew up in the world of drug and alcohol addiction treatment. Before that, there were some other things. And my experience is, as you're wearing an HIU hat, my experience at Hope, as we all know, was just absolutely amazing. And the training and expertise and leading I got there was phenomenal. And of course, we know there's nothing like the training of being in the room.
Mm-hmm.
And so, growing up in the room, what I really encountered over and over as I would delve into the lives of those who were suffering from addiction, and me being a recovering addicted person myself, was just fascinated with how this thing works, and then how it tragically doesn't work. And over and over and over and over again, I would come across this truth that I articulate today like this, is that our unseen, untouched, and unhealed pain drive medicative behavior. And so that's really, for me, a lot of the source of addiction. Addiction is honestly way more complex than that, and different ways in which it acts out or behaves in the world is different, and there's a lot of nuances and trainings that I've received along the way. But one person can be in a tragic car accident and walk away, and for whatever reason they have some internal resiliency in them, go unscathed. Another person in a similar accident, and they could be tremendously impacted. And for whatever reason, the way I just define trauma is just that. It is our unseen, untouched, and unhealed pain that is impacting the way we show up and function in the world. And so, all of that to say, along the way, I just realized in treatment that I really did want to kind of go out on my own and spread my own wings, and took a leap of faith and started Renovari. I came up with a name because Chris Williams counseling was already taken. And so Chris Williams is like way too common of a name. Like if you Google me, you may have to be on page 102.
Yeah, John Smith therapy.
Yeah, exactly. So Renovari is this Latin word that kind of is a little bit of a gymnast, meaning it's flexible.
Yeah.
And it can really mean primarily three different things, and that is to recover, to restore, or to renew. And so we think renovation. That's really,
Yeah.
And in fact, there's other home renovation organizations out there called Renovari when I was searching all, but nothing was Renovari counseling, which was great. So, but what we're trying to do is we're trying to recover from the hurts and the pains or the patterns of behavior or functioning in the world that really hold us back.
Mm-hmm.
And so in recovering from that, it allows us to show up a little bit better so that we can restore. And what we're trying to primarily restore is relationship. The relationship to to ourselves, relationship to other people. That could be relationship to God or the world around us. It's all about the restoration of relationship. And then the last one is renew. And this one for me has had a little bit of a development. And it's really about restoring our purpose, our meaning in the world. But today for me, it means restoring our creativity. The renewing our creativity. We are born with a tremendous amount of creativity. People always question that. I believe because, like for myself, when I think of a creative, I think of my wife, who is a singer and a songwriter and a director and producer in the musical theater world, And so she's the creative. But I still made pumpkin pancakes this morning. So the making of pumpkin pancakes from my Trader Joe's mix, as basic as that is still an act of creativity. We are constantly in the world of creativity and creating and making something of the world. And I just found that especially in the recovery from the things in life that hold us back, in these traumas, that one of the missing pieces, and a tremendously important missing piece that I really focus on in my practice and in what we do at Renovari, is not just helping a person heal from their pain, not just relationally function, but awaken their ability to make something of the world around them well. And we actually do that through looking at power and power dynamics. So that may get into a little bit of geeky nuances, but I have a whole model around that. But with all that said, really what we want people to do is, I believe the heart of it is that human beings flourish at the intersection of great relating and great creating. And so what we're trying to do is move the needle a little bit more towards our ability to relate well, and move the needle towards life-giving creativity.
That sounds amazing. Sounds like that offers a lot of hope to clients in general. Is there any way to, I don't know how that would look like in the room, but do you have, I don't know, like an example, or just like what would that look like in the room?
Well, what that would look like in the room is, if I would take something from the world of addiction and something that we call like enabling and codependency, and I don't want to get into all my hang-ups with those words and those terminologies, and I have a few, because I think much of our codependency is our natural human reactions to unnatural human behavior. So I have a lot of grace for that. I have a lot of grace for addiction and trauma and the whole thing. But with that said, where this model that I've developed, and really I say I developed, but it just appeared on my whiteboard one day as I was just kind of diagramming it and trying to figure something out and see it. But I had this woman, and she's incredibly gifted. And on paper, her ability to relate and create would look amazing. But her husband had, in his retirement, developed a pretty gnarly drinking problem. And then she had discovered that her son was doing heroin. And so all of her energies and all of her efforts into the world, and then the things that she loved most, being her family, were not working. In fact, they were working against her. She didn't want to go the 12-step understanding route of that, and there were some issues in the family of origin because of that, and I respected that. So I just showed her that, she's powerless against this threat, and I really needed her to connect with her powerlessness over the behaviors of her loved ones, as ridiculous as that was to her in the moment. But anytime we're powerless over a threat, we drop into this lower thing called reactivity, or in PTSD we call it hypervigilance. And really all that is a fear-based obsession. And it's sort of the lower part of our brain, what we call the limbic system, which is the one that just keeps us alive when we're in really deep danger or threat. But with that fear-based obsession and that reactivity comes a defense mechanism, and that's usually fight, flight, freeze. So she's in this place of terror with what's happening to her family, life-threatening situations, and she's being treated poorly and all these sort of things. She goes into her method was fight, meaning she doubles down on I'm going to fight this, I'm going to look for I'm going to pour out all the alcohol, or I'm going to get rid of all the drugs, I'm going to track down the dealer and put him in jail, or whatever the case may be. None of that works. And so maybe maybe in that moment in which she realizes that there isn't anything, she kind of freezes, and that looks like indecision and confusion. Or she may just flight, which is like, I'm out, and just kind of shut down and check out. Or literally like, I'm going to Cabo and skip the rest of you.
Bye.
But once we burn through that energy, then we drop into states of passivity and aggression. And passive looks like withdrawal and isolation and even apathy. On the other side of that, on the aggression side, it looks like control or criticism, judgment, manipulation. And so if we kind of like go down that list, then we burn through that energy and we come to this very, very, very dangerous state. And it's called a victim state. Now I want to make a clear distinction here. We all on planet Earth will be a victim to something, to a pain, to a hurt. And by no means am I saying every victim incident is equal. It's not. And so we need to have deep compassion and deep empathy and care for the places in which we or other fellow human beings have been hurt and how we carry that hurt. However, when that hurt and that pain and that fear is not resolved, and it sort of comes into a state of being, and that state of being, the victim state, looks like hopeless, helpless, lot of resentment and anger, tons of fear, trapped sadness. And when you're in that state and you have nowhere to go with that, here's the dangerous part of it, is that as we carry that inside of us, it has to go somewhere because it's real energy. And this is the hard realization. And what makes it difficult is we can't see it in the sense that the victim will always in their behavior feel justified by their actions. But what they will do is then they will become perpetrators. They will either act in towards themselves, which looks like doubling down on shame, insecurity, self-hate, self-loathing, self-sabotaging behavior, all of that sort of thing. Or they'll act out towards the world. Other people around them, they're more critical, you see the road rage stuff go up, you see... And again, because they're in the victim state, they feel justified by it. And I say they, I need to say we, when I'm in that place. And so it's just being able to see like how this pain and this hurt and this powerlessness have dropped us all the way down to people who behave in ways that actually maybe the people who originally harmed us, our original perpetrators, we become the thing that we don't like the most or that we hate the most. The spiritual writer Richard Rohr has this amazing line. It says, the pain that we do not transform, we transmit. And that's really what this dynamic talks about. So, and that's sort of like my left-hand side, like that's the bad side. So, Judy, you said something about hope. We need a way out of this. And so, and the powerless is that there's something in life that rips our ability to create and relate. It takes power away from us. And the perpetrator is trying to get power over right? And that's where every addiction comes from. You know, I've not met a person addicted who doesn't sort of played their victim card in a way to get high or to act out or whatever the case may be. Because, and then what that allows them to do is have, even if it's temporary, a sense of power over the pain or away from the pain. But anytime you have a powerful and a powerless dichotomy, you usually have an oppressor and an oppressed. You have a tyrant and their subjects. You have a slave owner and slaves. It's just, there's a lot of injustice in that. And I don't know why, but we as human beings do not do that well. But there is a different power that we can access, and that is power with. And so the power with is where we get the word empowerment. So I am sharing my power with you. So we can say that, like, Chris, aren't you powerful? And your 5-year-old is powerless against you. In a lot of ways, yes, except for when he wakes me up at 5 in the morning.
He has all the power.
Yeah, you're not so powerful.
But there's this connecting piece, and it's really the love that exists between us and my love for him that says, no, my job is not to subject him. So my job is to help him and lead him and guide him and love him, so that his natural human power in the world to, again, relate well and create well can increase. But any time that we feel like we're in a place of empowerment, there was something in you guys that's remarkable to me, because I envy the daylights out of podcasters. I'm thinking, one of these days I want to jump in the game, but having it. But I really, really, truly admire what you guys do. But from that place of empowerment, you weren't reactive on the fear-based obsession. You went into proactive, which is opportunity-focused. And then, instead of defensive, you went engaged. Engaged is a commitment to reality and the things around us. We're staying present in the moment. And then, instead of going passive-aggressive, you went connected. There's conversations between yourselves. There was conversation with Freddie. There was conversations with other people. There's so much, and a lot of that. Tons of vulnerability, by the way, right?
Yeah.
You know? And so you became connected instead of passive-aggressive. Passive-aggressive are disconnecting behaviors. Right. So you became connected. Out of that empowered, proactive, engaged connection, you have created something. And SessionWell exists to help other people to increase their either access to therapy, their understanding of therapy, or even their therapeutic tools themselves. And so you guys are a great example of how this thing works. So what we're looking at is, how do we restore healthy power to people with empowerment and get them back into a proactive, engaged mindset and action. And then how we help them get connected. Again, connection with the self, connections with others, and build those healthy connections. And then ask them the simple question, what do you want to make of your life and the world around you? And when you do that from an empowered position, who benefits? And it's usually everyone around them. And so that's just kind of a running down the model. But that's kind of how it all came about. And kind of the framework that I use in working with people. And what's fun for me these days is I don't get to do it just in the room. I consult with organizations. I coach leaders and influencers. And again, if I'm here to empower others towards a little bit better relating and a little bit better creating, we live in a better world. And I'm all about that.
That's awesome.
I can say you definitely do that. I've had a ton of respect for you and your substance
you.
abuse and addiction work. And then also your work, like you brought up just briefly, is for trauma, right?
Yeah.
Because working in substance abuse and addiction as well myself, I've realized that if we break trauma down from the buzzword and we go to what is actually there, the hurt.
Yes.
Trauma... it's hard when we sit down with people and we're like, well, they just need to stop drinking.
Yeah.
Well, that's all fine and dandy. You're looking at the behavior. You're not looking at what's driving the behavior. And when you find that wound, then you realize why they are self-medicating. And what's really amazing about addiction in itself, whether it's sex addiction, it's alcohol, it's substances, they follow pretty much the same line of trajectory.
Yeah.
Which is when we find that wound and we provide them the space to clean that, to prepare it to heal, then we remove the desire to medicate. We desire whatever that negative behavior is. All of a sudden, it's way more manageable if we go to where the pain is.
Yeah. So that's really, really good, Adam. I look at it as like two rails on a train track. You know, one would be you got to get into a recovery program. You got to have some support and a plan, and that is why I'm a big advocate and supporter of the 12-step movements. You know, because the support and the trajectory it gives people. Yeah. But if you take away their medicator without taking away the pain, it's almost cruel.
Absolutely.
Right. And so the other rail is that healing process. And so, hey, if we're going to get on a train to a new location that's much better than this Addictionville that's driving, that's land of destruction into a land of health, and we're going to get to that promised land of recovery, I just really believe we got to have those two rails.
So right back there, going to the wound, and then also that community, the relationships.
Yes.
Positive, healthy relationships.
Yeah.
Help build that support network to move you forward.
Absolutely.
And I love your empowerment model, like just being able to describe it and then applying it to just what we do in SessionWell. Part of me was like, oh, he should just write our mission statement. That's later, Chris. But I'll admit, like being in this council room, because we are at Renovari right now, you guys can't see it there, but there is a whiteboard, and I always see your model written on the board. And sometimes it's not erased during sessions, and it's so fascinating because every client that I come in, no matter what they're presenting and whatever their pain and wounds are, I look at your model and I'm like, oh my gosh, like that could apply to every single person that has just walked in here. So I don't know. I find it to be incredibly inspiring and applicable. It doesn't just have to be with like one population, but like you said, like you consult with other groups or organizers or influencers. I feel like that model applies to like everybody.
Yeah. Well, you know, and you know, one of the organizations that's doing great work in the world today is WinShape, which is Chick-fil-A's foundation, you know. And so I just have this great privilege and opportunity to take their leadership staff through that coming up here in November. And so there's just really fun things that along the way I just kind of, you know, I'm a spiritual person, and so I just kind of like God gives me some things and shows up some things along the way, and just taking advantage and opportunity of them. And the irony for this too, this is a little bit of a side note, but in trying to write the book on this, you know, trying to get it into people's hands and trying to, you know, help people, provide them with a model to kind of help people work through this, or themselves, I have to work it on myself. It's amazing how much of my own insecurity and powerlessness and my own junk and even some of my old wounds and pains show up in trying to get this thing out into the world. And so, as you were saying, Judy, really what it is for me is that I'm not coming up with anything new. I don't believe there's really anything new under the sun. What the model provides is a mirror of what already is. And in our world, we have done a phenomenal job of understanding pathology, what doesn't work. But I think where we're still in evolution and still in development of is figuring out what works, is our health. And so what I love about the empowered side is that it shows us what health looks like. And it's flexible enough to because it's just a mirror. It says, are you here or are you here? And hopefully there isn't any judgment on that. It's just that. It's just a reflection, and I'm over here. Oh man, I made this statement here. Like one of the things I'm embarrassed to say, but it's true. I used to say this, and it still slips out at times. I'm a good therapist, but not a good business person. Or I'm a terrible business person. So a terrible business person is an excuse for me, as a victim statement, to stay in my fear and the hard work that it's going to take to just keep moving Renovari along so we can keep making this world a little bit better place in the places where we can.
It's not perfection, it's progress, right?
Oh, absolutely.
But we sit there with our own internal victim statements and set us up to stay on this broken trajectory.
Yeah.
I loved how you put that.
And the crazy thing about this, Adam, is like we use it as a badge of courage. You know, like, you know, oh, well, I'm just not a good business person. And sort of like, that's for other people. And by the way, I'm too ethical to be a good business person, right? Like, that's crazy.
Oh, yeah.
Like, you know.
I love it because I've heard those
Yeah.
statements,
Yes,
right? Like,
yes.
and you're like, wow, that's profound. When it's really bullcrap.
Yeah, no, it's not profound. And actually, it looks like this. If our work as therapists isn't more available to the world, I say this from a passive position we are perpetrating. To have a gift that can help people and not do the hard work it takes to connect them to our help is a form of harm.
Absolutely.
And so for me to have that statement, and again, it affects me, and it affects my family, and it affects the organization and the people who are a part of it, and ironically, but very clearly, it affects those who could use our help. Yeah.
I think what you said about the fear thing is totally true too. I was like thinking like, okay, it is putting a mirror on our own stuff. Because I always tell my husband all the time, I'm not creative. Like I don't go there. I'm not creative. And he says it all the time. Like, but you are, like how you were saying earlier about making pancakes.
Yeah.
He's like, you get up every day, whether it's in counseling or in schooling or teaching, like you just come up with stuff like on the fly type of thing, and that sort of is creativity. Or just decorating your office space, those kinds of things. But if I was to dig deeper, it's a protection. Like saying you're not a good business owner is because I'm afraid if I do put out there that I'm creative and someone rejects it and tells me that I'm not, then I feel bad. And so I rather just put it out there like, oh no, I'm not creative, or I'm not a good business owner, or I'm not a good whatever. So that way it's already kind of like protecting me, but it keeps me at a victim state of not being able to grow and to be empowered.
Yeah.
It's this false sense of security, right? Because then I don't have to worry about what I could be if I allowed myself to grow.
And isn't that crazy? We're all sort of protecting ourselves against judgment and failure and criticism, you know, and we can get into whole, you know, we do a whole Brene Brown session, you know, but really, you know, what she's democratized in shame and in vulnerability and also touching on this creativity as well is that I don't want you to judge me like I judge myself. Okay, so if I hold judgment or I hold some sort of criticism towards myself, it could even be, again, going back to shame, then I can control it. But if you think that of me, I can't control that, and for whatever reason that's double the pain. And so what I don't want you to do is to affirm, and so like that's some of what I'm struggling with in writing the book, is because I believe that I'm addicted to two things that are not healthy, and that is novelty and profundity. So I want to be super original, and I want to come off as brilliant. So I want to be original and brilliant. And so when I'm writing my own stuff and I read a paragraph or I read a section and I'm like, and then the comparison game gets in. So that's not as original as so-and-so, and that's certainly not as brilliant as so-and-so. And so what is that? Well, it's that this need inside of me that doesn't accept who I am and how I write and whatever it is today. And I want to protect myself from this place inside of me that says that I'm not enough or that what I have in my creativity. Now, here's the irony, is that how does that then perpetrate, right? Well, one, I keep myself stuck. And that's actually really the I think the hallmark of victim state is that a place of being stuck or trapped.
Yeah.
And again, whatever God has placed in me to put into the world, I'm withholding.
Yeah.
I'm not being faithful. I'm not being true. I'm not being responsible with that. And so it's a lot of work, you know. So where do I plug back into my empowerment sources to keep putting words on paper to see this thing keep going? Yeah.
What would be your empowerment sources? Like, where do you go when you have those doubts or like moments of feeling stuck?
I think the primary source in my life is my relationship with God. I mean, my spirituality is easily the primary source. But I find that my understanding is this, is that God always works in partnership. That I don't believe in an impositional God, a God who's going to take over and control, and he's created us as free agents and free beings in the world, and then that we can, we make choices, and that's one of the reasons one of the ways we reflect God. So I need to partner with God, and so in my prayers and my meditations, that does look like affirmations. And affirmations aren't, sort of me bootstrapping. It's like, Chris, you're good enough, and you're smart enough, and the old Saturday Night Live, doggone it, people like you, And so, but what it looks like is a reminder of who God says I am, and I repeat it back to myself, and I journal it, and I write it, and I do all of that. And really, all I'm doing at the end of the day is saying an amen to truth. Which also includes like the things in me that are still broken and still weird and still off and still can cause harm in the world. And so I want to be accurate with that, and continue to grow through that. But really just accepting that, like, you can do this, you got it, and whatever it is in the world, it's fine. And so, and sort of like the line I have to myself now. And I'm still working on believing it, but it is, once you produce something and make something, however it is received in the world, none of your damn business.
That's good.
That's not your job. Your job is to create. Other people, that's their job to do whatever they want with it, including if they want to judge it, criticize it, or whatever. So it's kind of hard, but I got to say it like that to myself. Chris, it's none of your damn business what other people do.
Well, it's almost like you're functioning off like this, what I've been told is the starfish principle, right? And so it's this, Japanese metaphor of essentially this old gentleman walks down to the beach. He sees millions of starfish on the beach. He sees this little boy running around the beach throwing one starfish in the ocean. And the older gentleman walks up to the little boy and says, "What are you doing? You're not going to be able to save all of these. You're going to make no difference." And the little boy turns to him, throws one in, and says, "What mattered to that one?" So what you create, sure, whether or not it goes New York Times or if it helps 5, 6, 15 people. I mean, I love how you present that whole power dynamic of sort of withholding our light from the world.
Yeah.
Like, why would we do that willingly in our mind if we knew the sacrifice was we were going to inhibit someone from becoming their best selves? Never.
Absolutely. And Adam, you nailed it. It took me a while to find the organizing metaphor for the model in the book, and it's light. We are born with this incredible light within us. Anyone who's been in that room in the birth of a child, it's blinding. It's so illuminating.
Wow.
And so, but through the pains and the hurts and the things that happen to us, it's sort of like the light. It's like we're on a dimmer switch, and it dims and it dims, and the energy, the power comes out until it goes dark. And watch out when it goes dark. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to turn the light back on. And it's so, you guys have experienced it, isn't it, as therapists?
Oh my gosh,
so amazing. I mean, goosebumps. Like when you see the lights come back on with the people that we're working with, and then it's like, okay, let's get on with relating and creating.
And it's amazing when you watch that individual light up and then realize the warmth they get from their own light.
Yes.
Because that's the part that they have this moment where they sit back and they're like, why did I ever turn it off?
Uh-huh.
And it's working through those things.
Yeah.
And then it's like, all of a sudden, I have the boundaries to make sure no one hits my dimmer switch but me, right?
Yes.
And then it oozes out to everybody else around them.
And when the dimmer switch gets turned down, or sometimes when maybe something happens in our life where we just get unplugged, do we have it in our life to plug back in? And what is that? And I think, Judy, your question of like, what it is for me, and this is, again, one of those kind of like, kind of embarrassing things. But like, when I was carrying a lot of stress over trying to figure out how to be an entrepreneur and trying to figure out how to be run a business, there was a lot of sleep deprivation because of anxiety. Yeah. and then there was a lot of worry, and then it turns into distraction, getting lost in social media, getting lost in news sites or, sports for me. And I would go to these coping mechanisms that would feel, again, they're all addictive. They all feel like they give me energy, or really at the end of the day, it's just distraction.
Yeah.
Distraction from my anxiety or my depression or whatever. But one of the things that I've discovered that is, I say I discovered it, it's like embedded in our human condition, is, dude, sleep.
Yeah.
Like you're feeling like off and powerless and not creative and you can't connect well. Take a stinking nap, go to bed, and if you're having real sleep problems, like I was having, go see someone that can help you.
Yeah.
And so I do one of the apps. There's lots of really good meditative apps out there. I use one called Calm.
That one's really good.
Oh, Calm is like, it's awesome for me because the sleep ones, and there's a lot of ones on there. It's one of the ways I'm able to plug back in.
Yeah.
Can I take a walk? Can I move my body? Can I exercise? Am I eating? And what am I eating? And so there's these real basic things in life that help us connect back in. And then ultimately, I am a people person. And though I am with people most days, all days with my work, I need to connect back into authentic relationship. That's such a power source for me. That and I believe for all of us, but man, that's a huge one, and it's not always easy because there's sometimes where those authentic relationships take a lot more than they give, but really it's finding those healthy relationships where there's that flow between.
And actually being able to identify authentic relationships.
Like
life-giving ones.
Yeah, I think that's something that like my generation as a millennial we struggle with. Because authentic relationships aren't, it's not followers, it's not people across messaging apps necessarily. It's, actually having the ability to share space with someone. And so once we realize what that authentic relationship is, it becomes so empowering. It's not.
Well, and this just kind of takes me back, is I served as director of campus ministry and spiritual formation at Hope while I was getting my degree there. And I remember all the students would come to me, it's like, oh, we just want community, and we want to build relationships, we want community. And I'm like, how do you engage in conflict? When things get really tough, how do you work through that? It's like, what you want is, this is a big word, but homogeneity. Like you want everyone to look alike, think alike, act alike. And then you still want diversity, but you want diversity around a very particular set of things. But again, how do we build relationship when our true authentic self looks very different from somebody else's true authentic self? And let's back that up. How do I even stinking access my true authentic self? 44, I'm still figuring that thing out, and I'm hoping that the timeline is the rest of my life. But again, it's like, what does that actually mean, and how does that actually show up in the world? And then how do we work through our own stuff so that we become a little bit safer, healthier people, more authentic people to connect to? So, and set boundaries around the ones that, as I say, that doesn't work for me.
Well, I hope that you write your book soon. So
you can keep me accountable.
Please.
Yes.
And you're going to provide us with a super bill for this, right?
Yes.
So what can, if you had a takeaway for people listening, whether it's like a future client or the resistant client or just another clinician, what would be your takeaway or encouragement for them?
My encouragement from them is just to, one, as we talk about these lofty aspirations of health, is that look at just moving the needle. We're looking at 1 degree changes. We're looking at, hey, how do I relate to myself a little bit healthier today? Or what's something I can do? What's something I can, quote unquote, make? And just a small example of that is like, my wife and I are front porch people. And so I kind of geek out on design, like kind of like this room, but I want that environment. So how I hang the lights on the front porch or how I decorate it. And so it's like, I'm making a space there. Even if I show up ugly and weird and all whacked out of my own mind, at least the space is nice, And we don't have an incredible budget for that. So I may scour the dollar store, or I'm looking for the coupons for Hobby Lobby. I don't want people to think that this takes a whole lot.
No.
It just takes creativity. And the last thing I'll say is, like, whatever your spiritual belief is, watch what happens to the energy in the room when you start moving the needle. Your connection to goodness in the world as you move towards, again, great relating, or better, a little bit better relating, a little bit better creating. And I just think the last thing is something that you said, Judy, is hope. Like, if anything, don't let despair go dark.
Yeah.
Just whatever you do, even if, again, it's just a little bit of flicker of that dimmer. Today, if you're in that dark despair place, just turn it on, or get with somebody who can help you turn that knob a little bit so the light can come on.
Wow.
Yeah. So thank you guys.
So thank you so much. I appreciate you being here and being able to break down things a little bit for us. So if people saw something they liked, how can they get a hold of you?
You go to our website, renovaricounseling.com. Renovari is Renovari. And so all the team is on there, except for Judy. We got to get Judy on there quick. We're working on that. So, and by the way, I love that Judy's on our team. It's so awesome. But with that said, our number's on there. My number, my email, the team is. You can get a hold of us through there. And we'll do our best to get back to you and help you out however that we can. And I always say this: hey, if we're not the people, we may not be, and that's okay. We're going to work hard to find the right people.
We have really good referrals.
Yeah. So yeah, we may be like, hey man, Overland Therapy is the place to be, man. Get under Adam and watch what happens, man. Watch it.
If you want to get to the forest, that's where I'm at.
Hey,
so.
and can I just jump in here with
Please.
something? I believe a huge future, especially in male health, is getting us out of the room and getting us back into nature.
Absolutely.
And so, I want to encourage you on that road. Absolutely. And say, like, hey, let's get some guys out. Let's get some healing experiences, and let's get some dudes back into relating and creating well.
No, I'd love to have some conversations on the primal self.
Yes.
I think again, whether male or female, it's when we really get back to the base of ourselves.
Yeah.
And start encouraging those natural behaviors instead of just discouraging them, right?
Absolutely.
So, again, thank you so much for having us in your space, having us in this office, and you have a wonderful day. And if you guys have been listening to us driving in, please continue to drive safe. Yes. And then for those who are watching, thank you so much. Hit the like button and then also hit the follow. So thank you guys for what you do and listen, and we'll see you next time.
Bye. Thank you.